right, welcome back. You're still watching Morning Cafe. This is indeed a State of the Nation with me, Fred Indimuli. We're switching gears now and talking matters culture. We're very privileged to have in studio this morning the Principal Secretary for Culture, the Arts and Heritage, Umi Bashir. It is a pleasure to have you in studio. Good morning, na karibu sana.
Good morning, thank you.
Yes, now the Constitution of Kenya, Article 11, provides that this constitution recognizes culture as a foundation of the nation and as a cumulative civilization of the Kenyan people and the nation, and continues to say that the state shall promote all forms of national and cultural expressions through literature, the arts, traditional celebrations, science communication, information, mass media, publications, libraries, and other cultural heritage. It goes ahead to say the state shall also recognize the role of science and indigenous technologies in the development of the nation and promote the intellectual property rights of the people of Kenya, and Parliament shall enact legislation towards this end. Now, Madam PS, when it comes to culture, this is not a conversation that many Kenyans have. In fact, the basic talk is that when it comes to culture, even in the region, we are not that rich, that our neighbors have a richer and better culture. Why is this, and why are those sentiments so strong that when it comes to culture, we're not up there, really?
First of all, thank you for having me this morning. Culture is a sector that is deemed to be boring, so to speak, and not cool, especially in the current digital age that we live in. And given that it is already enshrined in the Constitution, it is a sector that has a potential of raking in and upgrading the economic sector of this country. And culture is looked at something which is old school and not up to date, but that is wrong, because culture is what you are, it's your identity as a Kenyan and as a human being. Our cultures are different, but at the same time we are Kenyan to the core. When you go to the setup of your village back at home, where your grandmother used to tell you stories and you would live in thatched huts, there was nothing boring about it. It was a way of livelihood and it was a way of living. And that still happens. It's not outdated, it is what is still happening now. Yes. But when we move to the city, we tend to adapt other cultures and other cool cultures, so to speak. Cool cultures being how people dress, what they eat. We've stopped eating mokimo, we've stopped eating matoke, anjera. What we want to eat now, it's pizzas and, you know, cool things. Over time, that seems to really put us in an awkward situation as a country, because even our generation now think, our generations to come will always think that pizzas are cooler than our traditional gastronomy and cuisines. Food aside, culture is an aspect of pride. And when you travel this world and you say you're a Kenyan, one thing that they like to mention is, oh, you can run, so you're a fast runner, you know. And the notion is that all people who come from Kenya are known to be, you know, fast runners. Okay. We are known to be sports heroes, and not basically sports alone, but what leads you to be an athlete is what you eat, what you drink, the music, and the foods that we eat. Practice, of course, is also there. But our cultures are different in every province and every region of this country. We have the Maasai Cultural Festival coming up in a month or so, whereby we have a showcase of different dances, different poetry, different music, and just a way of livelihood of the Ma. So the three counties, Kajiado, Narok, and Samburu, tend to come together like they did last year. We had it in Narok, where they came together and His Excellency the President attended, just to show that he really supports the idea of deepening our cultural practices. Okay. Now, when you go to something like the museums, It is also under the State Department of Culture, Arts and Heritage. We have very resourceful sites and monuments, the Vasco da Gama Pillar, Fort Jesus, all the way to Turkana Boy, where he was found in Turkana. We have a science park coming up in Turkana, where now that will definitely increase our ANAs and our resources as a country. So when we, as a country, we concentrate mostly on water, infrastructural development as a source of economic upgrade. But then selling fridge magnets, selling merchandise in the museum, selling ourselves as the home of human origins. This is an opportunity that we have as a country, and the fact that we removed the visa, we are saying that we are now a visa-free country. It's also a plus for us in the tourism industry.
Okay, and Madam Pierce, you mentioned the issue of identity, and as you rightly put it, it could be a generational issue that discussions around culture are probably dying out when it comes to the younger generation, the Gen Z especially, and the Gen Alpha, who do not necessarily identify with even the ethnic communities they come from. And hence my question, that how come we've always had, the Nigerians are a very strong culture, and you can very easily identify the way they eat, the way they talk, our neighbors in Uganda too. But when it comes to Kenya, that cultural identity is still lacking. Is it a conversation that we are working on? And where are we in as far as that is concerned in terms of creating and building the national psyche, in embracing culture and making it part of even the younger generation? Yeah,
so as I said, culture is deemed to be old school. And we are in a generation where social media is prominent day-to-day part of our lives. And the Gen Z and the current generations, Gen Alpha, seem to drift away from the cultural practices of our forefathers, because it is not what we have in the cities. It is what we have back at home. Now, the museums, for instance, we are trying to inculcate a practice of having a partnership with the younger generation, where they can come and find the museums cool. They can come and skate there, do their art, showcase their arts, showcase their drawings, and they see that the museums is not a boring old building for old people.
Yeah.
I myself used to think that the museums are for old things only, but that's not it. It's a history on everything that we are as a country. If you're not a patriotic Kenyan, it is hard for you to understand that your culture is part and parcel of your identity. If you go to Bomas of Kenya, we have different homesteads. The younger generation actually came there, most of them during the last part of last year, where we had the Utamaduni Day, we had the Minorities Day, and we showcased our different foods, our different dances from all tribes that we have as a country. Now, in Bomas of Kenya, we have different villages. So I would like to encourage our youths, our Gen Zs and our Gen Alphas to go and visit. If they cannot go back to Ushago and at home to see what is going on there, they can come to Bomas, and we showcase every aspect of camel breeding, camel rearing, milking cows, and you experience that. So what we're trying to do as government is to make culture cool again, to make culture part and parcel of what you post in social media. As an influencer, you tend to look for brands like Gucci, the cool brands. But there's nothing cool about that if you don't appreciate the fact that a thatched hut is cool. Going to Fort Jesus is cool, and taking a picture there. So what we're trying to do is have a partnership with the younger generation, so that when we leave this world, we have a generation that understands and has digitized and documented all our products as a country.
Where we come from and where we're heading, probably. Yes. But when it comes to that discussion, many Kenyans know our history probably as far back as independence. And Mau Mau, that's where it starts going forward. And yet there's so much that happened before then. Is that part of what we're working on? Because even looking for literature of about Kenya pre-independence is also a problem. Not much is said or documented about that. Is there a gap that we're trying to fill in as far as literature is concerned, pre-independence, or archival material pre-independence as well?
Actually, all that is available in the archives. If you walk into the archives, I know archives is just a meeting spot where you tell someone, let's meet at archives. But when you go inside, there's so much content. There's so much content that you are given as a person who's interested in researching on anything pre-independence Kenya. Currently, recently actually, around July, we got back a large chunk of our documents which were taken by the British before independence and during the colonial period. So these are the mitigated artifacts that we received from the UK. These are contents and documents that that were taken from our country during the emergency period. And we've been really fighting as a country to get this back because these are our assets, our documentation, our letters, all the stories that were there even during the 1800s. And so as a country, we also have our artifacts all over this world. We have our artifacts in the British Museum. We have them in Germany. We have them in America. And what we're doing as a government right now is to try to repatriate all these artifacts back to our country, because we have a situation where people are making money out of our assets that they stole from our country. This was during the Mau Mau period, during post-emergency, the pre-emergency period, and you will find that most of them are stuck with these assets and don't want to give them to us. But we're trying to have a diplomatic relationship with them, whereby we're telling them, listen, we need them back. They're ours, yeah, right? Because like the Americans recently gave us back 85 vigangos last year. Vigangos are basically spiritual beings that are erected in front of your house when you die. So it's a spiritual being, it's a wooden carving that the Americans took, thinking that, why is it that these Africans, these Kenyans are fast runners? What is it about them? What's special about their brain? So they took them as you know, gifts, so to speak, and just to understand what is the spiritual being that is shifting with this Vigango.
They kept them in a museum somewhere?
Yes, in University of Illinois and different museums. So 85 of them were repatriated last year. Now, as a country, we ratified a convention called the UNESCO 1970 Convention on the artifacts that are taken out of the country. Once we repatriated that, we now have a seat at the table and say internationally and say, look, we have ratified this convention. So we have every right now to get and receive our artifacts back to our country. And when we receive these artifacts, we store them in museums and we make money out of them. Look at Egypt, for instance. We talk about the pyramids, the mummies. People travel thousands of miles just to come and see that. We have more so the same kind of assets, but then we don't have them in our country. They've gone to the British Museum. And you see something like Kiti cha Enzi. When you go to the British Museum, it is right there. You cannot go and take it, you understand? But it is ours.
It is a Kenyan artifact.
It is a Kenyan artifact. Koitalel Al Arab Samoy, the skull, up to now, we have not received it back from the British. Who took it? You understand? So these are some of the things that are Kenyan, belong to us, and we demand for them. But now we're trying to be diplomatic about it and say, listen, there are 37,000 artifacts and fossils around the globe in almost 7 countries rather, and different institutions. Now, the conversation we're trying to have, even in Germany last week, where we were there in Berlin, is try and see how we can get our artifacts back and still be friends with these countries. So the ratification of this convention was a plus for us as a country, because since 1970 it had never been ratified. So what we're trying to do now is have that conversation of repatriation of artifacts. And
does it mean that when all this comes back, then we start the conversation afresh? Because a lot of this younger generation don't even know that there are these artifacts outside Kenya that belong to us, and this is pre-independence information. So when it comes back and then put in museums, the knowledge gap still exists.
You know what the problem is? Lack of reading and lack of getting information for our younger generation. They need to be proactive. Go to the libraries. We have the KNLS Maktaba Kuu. There's a library there that has all the information that you need. If you need books pre-colonial, post-colonial, they're there. If you need anything on Mau Mau, they're there. Forget about even the time for the Mau Mau. Let's go as far back as the 1800s, where there were conflicts in the Lamu-Shela conflict of Lamu, where people were killed and there were human remains which went to Germany. All those things are there. So it's for us to be proactive and read. Come to the archives, you're welcome. Come to the museums. We have 6 archives in this country. Nyeri, Nakuru, we have the main one here in Nairobi, we have in Mombasa. So in all parts of this country, if you're serious, you can go to Kisumu and walk in and find the information in it. So it is for us to be proactive. But if we hold our phones and sit at home, it's not going to be of any value to us.
How come this, in as far as bridging the knowledge gap, how come this is not mainstreamed even in our education system? That back then, I remember we used to, when I went to school, we used to read about getting ruins in class. Nowadays, you talk to the younger generation, they have no clue about most of these things. Is it because it's not in the curriculum?
Actually, that's a very good point, you know. You're right, we should inculcate our stories, our heritage as a country into our history, into our geography, into our curriculum. I think there's a gap there, you're right. But at the same time, there's something to be proud about. Gede historical ruins was recently included in the UNESCO World Heritage sites. And for us, it's the 8th one as a country. You see, it is a win. And I think every small win for us as a country is a win, because someone like the countries like South Africa, Ethiopia have 12 sites, Morocco, Algeria have 9. So we are number 5 in the whole continent. So the fact that Gede ruins was actually engraved and listed as a World UNESCO Heritage Site, it is a plus and a win for us.
What is the implication of that, being listed as a heritage site?
You get so many benefits, and you get a seat at the table. You get so many benefits, and even maintaining of those sites, UNESCO will support in that. So it is a plus for us. And the more you have, the more heritage you're entitled to have, and the more you write your own stories as a Kenyan. So when you increase the number of sites and monuments that you have as a country, it's a plus, because you have a seat at the big table at UNESCO. And when funds are divided across the countries that don't even have one UNESCO World Heritage site, so it puts them in an awkward position, because you have countries like South Africa in the continent that has 12 sites, and us who are now coming up who have 8. It puts us in a position where now we have a seat at the table. The World Heritage Committee is a seat where we got last year as a country. We never have, and it's like a big boys club. And finally, we became members of the World Heritage Committee last year.
We were admitted to the big boys club.
Finally, yeah, finally.
All right. So this week we continue looking at the scorecard, the 2-year scorecard of President William Ruto. Last Friday marked exactly 2 years after he took oath of office. Now, you as a person heading this department, there's so much that probably you have achieved as a Department of Culture and National Heritage. Kindly take us through some of that, and what is this that is so new in the first 2 years? We know, for example, that this has to be said, we had Utamaduni Day at some point on 26th of December, then it moved to 10th of October. Now we don't have an Utamaduni Day.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. So the first Utamaduni Day was last year, and you know, the thing is, I know the days have been changing. Mara, it was Moi Day, and it's been shifting. Huduma Day, it was Utamaduni Day. Now it has been whisked away. But I have hope that we'll get back to Utamaduni Day, because it is the only day as a country that we practice, and we have a celebration of all our cultures brought together at Bomas of Kenya. So the first one was last year. Now, Utamaduni Day was a win for us because it has never happened, right? 2, we had the Minorities Day. Minorities tribes are the tribes, the Wata, the small tribes of this country. And the Bajuni, for instance, the Boranas, and so on. So there's a day on the 18th of December every year that is an international day that we celebrate. But last year was the first time again we celebrated as a country. This shows you that we are at least headed in the right direction in appreciating our different cultures. Another thing I'd like to point out as an achievement for us as a government is Ushanga, the Ushanga initiative that we have, the beadwork that we have as a country is done by our pastoralist women. And initially we were 7 counties in Kenya that did the Ushanga and practiced the Ushanga. Tell
us more about that Ushanga. What exactly is it?
Okay, so it's a beadwork. Ushanga, I wish I wore mine today, but it's a beadwork that is done by the women prominently in the pastoralist areas, and they sell this as beads, bracelets, necklaces, belts, the shoes, the Maasai shoes, for instance, the beads on that is what we call Ushanga. Now, they sell these products, and they make a livelihood, these women. They're done by the women in Maasai areas like Kanarok, Kajiado, Samburu, Marsabit, Turkana, West Pokot. We recently added 3 more counties to the 7 counties. So now we have Garissa, we have Laikipia, and we have Elgeyo Marakwet. So we have 10 Ushanga counties.
Okay.
What does this mean? This means that we are literally activating and practicing and implementing the bottom-up transformation agenda, which we're campaigning on as government before we came in. So the best part about this is we're starting from the bottom of the pyramid. That's where these women are. A Maasai woman or a Turkana woman, all that she knows in terms of creativity or in terms of creating a livelihood is that bead. So she uses her hands, she uses her time, she uses her resources by getting those beads, buying them and selling them and getting a livelihood, paying fees for our children, food on the table and so forth. So it's a win for us because we increase that number. That means also that we increase the number of cooperatives in the counties, because you have to form cooperatives in the county level for us to support you from the State Department of Culture, Arts and Heritage under the Ushanga Kenya initiative. Okay. So this was a win for us.
And staying on that Ushanga mode, is this what we're talking about? Because there's this culture where across the world you go anywhere and you can easily identify a Kenyan through this.
Actually, not only a Kenyan. If you watch the Olympics, we see like other athletes were actually wearing the Kenyan bracelet, and when we asked them why, they said, we like the colors and we like the feel of the beads. You understand? So it's not about, some of them traveled. Randomly, the other day I was in a store somewhere out of the country, and the gentleman serving me, he was a German, and he was wearing a Kenyan bracelet. I asked him, are you Kenyan? He said, no, I'm not. I just visited the Masai Mara, and I loved the work that was being sold by these women at the gate of the Masai Mara. Okay. And I bought it, and I said, wow, so would you like to come back? He said, definitely. See, that now increases our numbers. When you look at last week, we were in the Bugafest in Germany, where even our president, His Excellency, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, attended. This shows that he's taking culture very seriously, because if you can go and, for a cultural event that is out of the country, and encourage Kenyans and Germans actually, to come and be tourists and enjoy the products that we have as a country, it's a win for us as the State Department of Culture, Arts and Heritage. At the Olympics, we had the Kenya House. And it was the best Kenya House, because the Kenya House is basically an exhibition that we have as a country in the Olympic city, the country that is having an Olympic. For instance, this time it was Paris. So we had a showcase of all our gastronomy, ugali, matoke, and
in Paris.
And the Bomas dancers were there. If you check YouTube, it was all over social media, where our dancers were on the streets dancing and entertaining people. This, we have no doubt, will increase the number of tourists that we are having in the country. Last year we had 1.8 million tourists, but we look at a trajectory of increasing this to even 5 in the next financial year, 5 million in the next financial year. We're working hand in hand with the State Department of Tourism so that we can see our products as culture, heritage, how we can connect and increase the number of tourists. Another thing probably to mention is the devolution. Our constitution clearly states in Schedule 4 that there are devolved functions that are supposed to go to the counties. As a State Department, we've taken this very seriously, and we have devolved museums. We are going to devolve 8 museums, and up to now we've devolved 2. There's the Trans Nzoia one and the Kisumu one, which we're waiting for an official, big function, but legally we have transferred that museum. And the number of museums that we have are enough for us as a country to share, even with the county governments, because without the county governments, there's no way there's going to be a national government. So we respect devolution, and that is why we have tried to activate Schedule 4 and implement it.
Let me bring you back to Nairobi when you're talking about museums, and the main museum at the interchange, the former museum roundabout, the National Museum of Kenya, we know now the archive, but there's something on Langata Road, what was Uhuru Gardens, yes. And the gates have remained closed for quite a while. We've seen the space where we hold national holidays, but we understand there's a lot more in that space that Kenyans are yet to experience, and many people are wondering, okay, fine, you're talking about culture. There's a lot that's there. We've had the previous president and even President William Ruto get into some areas within that Uhuru Gardens and get to experience a lot more that Kenyans are yet to experience, and people are wondering, when will we get to see the inside of Uhuru Gardens?
That's a good question. You know, the Uhuru Gardens Museum is a state-of-the-art museum, and we say you save the best for the last. So we are trying to make it as perfect as possible before we open the gates to Kenyans. And this museum is currently under the Ministry of Defense, who are now working with our State Department on the side of the museums to ensure that once we open these doors, there are no excuses in terms of quality, in terms of capacity, in terms of the curators, because what is there is not what is in these other museums. What is there is the home, the actual home and the house of former presidents, their cars, their pens, their, you know, the cups that they used to drink coffee with, not coffee, but chai with, and so forth. So I'm so proud of that museum, and I cannot wait for us to open the gates, because it is not yet done. In short, it is not yet completed.
Okay.
It's an ongoing work of art, so to speak. So we are hopeful that probably by next year we should be done. By next year, I think, because you know, it is not a one-man show. We're doing this with another ministry, and as a whole government approach, it is the state-of-the-art museum whereby we have inculcated, as you said, past history, before independence, what was going on, who were the governors, who were the councillors, how did this work, how did Nairobi City come about? All that is going to be found there. There's a tunnel called the Heroes Tunnel, where the fallen heroes, the Mau Mau veterans, actually are named, and the plaques, small plaques on the dates and names. So it's a historic place. When you go, there's a part called the what is called the Heroes Corner, where the Heroes Square rather, where we have our heroes now, apart from the Mau Mau veterans. So it's it is certain ingredients brought together to form the best art, the best history, and the best heritage for us as a country. So trust you me, once we open those gates, the amount of tourists we'll be getting will increase. The number of local tourists, the Kenyans who actually keep calling and asking, when are you guys opening this place? Are just, it's crazy numbers. And we're excited about it as government, because it's a big achievement and a win for us as the Kenya Kwanza government.
Okay.
Yeah, so once that is done, I'll invite you, and probably you can come with your family and you'll enjoy it.
We're definitely looking forward to that. The other issue, and this was a promise you made sometime last year, I think during Utamaduni Day, was that by 10th of October, which I think was an anticipation that we'll have Utamaduni Day this year, 10th of October 2024. Now I think it's Mazingira Day, but there's this discussion about the Kenyan dress. And many Kenyans have been looking forward to a national identity in as far as what we wear. And there was a unified, we were to get a unified plan on how the Kenyan dress would look like. How far along are we with that?
It's a good question. It's actually a promise we made last year in Utamaduni Day. You're very keen. I'm glad to know that. And we are almost 1 year down the line. We have formed working groups to inculcate a whole country approach, whereby we cannot have one Kenyan dress, whereby you see, where I come from, what I wear back at home as a Somali and what you wear we come from are two different things. So what we're trying to do is bring on board different stakeholders who can give us different ideas, because we don't want to sit in a boardroom at Maktaba Kuu, where my office is, and say, listen, we're going to decide for you what you're going to wear. So what we're trying to do is bring on board creatives, artists, designers as stakeholders in the industry, and have a seat at the table and tell us, what do you think? How do you think we should go about it? We're also trying to map out, go in the different regions that we have, go and listen to the Turkana. What is their vision? What is their opinion about the Kenyan dress? Go to Lamu. What is their opinion about the Kenyan dress? Go to Kisumu. What's their opinion about it? Because this thing actually was done before the Kenyan dress, if you remember, but it failed because people sat in a boardroom and decided this is what you're going to do, and it failed. So what we're trying to avoid is rushed decisions, even if it's going to take us more than a year. What we're trying to do is come up with a joint decision as a country, whereby we have a dress that inculcates the different cultures, the different stories of every Kenyan that we have in the country. So that is in the works, and now that Utamaduni Day is gone, I'm very positive and hopeful that probably by next year we'll have it back again. So I'm sure we'll have good news.
Okay.
In another year.
So you're extending this deadline, not 10th October anymore this year?
Yeah, so
sometime next year.
I'm positive that we'll have
we
a
remain
address
positive. Okay.
very soon. Yeah, very soon.
All right, and going back to the issue of museums, we were still talking about how much there's a lot of creation of new and evolved museums in Kenya. There are places like Maralal, where the founding father of the nation was held, and one wonders, are those places still open to Kenyans? Are there any kind of developments happening in such areas?
It's a very good question. As you know, the story of Mzee Jomo Kenyatta and where he was imprisoned, where he was held, it was not one place in this country. Lodwar, Maralal, all the way to Kapenguria. The places are open, but not a state of the art where we would want to be proud of as a country. So we have a lot to do in that sector. Currently, we're renovating Kapenguria Museum, whereby Akina Acheng Oneko, Acheng Oneko and Bildad Kagia, and of course Mzee Jomo Kenyatta were held. This is our story, and our story seems to be fading away in terms of putting this in a digital or documentation in such a way that I can sit in Nairobi and walk through Kapenguria Museum and I don't have to necessarily visit the place. So what we're trying to do is renovate it in such a way that if a German comes there, there's a place you press and you get a translation in your specific country.
And you get a virtual tour.
A virtual tour too. So we are working towards that. Of course, lack of resources and all that, but that's not an excuse. That is what is the problem in our State Department. But we're trying to partner with development partners. We're trying to partner with embassies and countries that have the same vision in heritage and archives matters and also our stories in the museums. So that is something we cannot afford to forget, because 100 years from now, the story of Mzee and his team and the Kapenguria 6 has to be told, not necessarily by reading books, because we are moving from that, by listening to podcasts, for instance, by virtual tours, coming here to the museum or sitting in your office and watching this and experiences how Fort Jesus is, Lamu, how is it, how are the Gedi ruins, how did it come about, and so forth. So we're trying to work on that as a State Department, and it's quite intriguing because there are very many players who are interested, development partners who want to help us on this. So we hope to be reporting more positive matters, our history in terms of museums. And you see, the climate change also is not very nice to us, because our sites and monuments are really dilapidated because of the crystallization of the ocean waters, especially from Fort Jesus. And Lamu, if you look at our museum, and also when you look at the Vasco da Gama pillar. So what we've tried to do is safeguard that. We're trying to see a situation where 50 years from now, will the fort still be standing? 100 years from now, with the Vasco da Gama, because will we have to again uplift and move it to another place? You know, this is because of climate change. So we're trying to see how we can incorporate climate change partnerships with the development partners and the workers' government to ensure we safeguard that. The Fort Jesus, we've used so much money to put a buffer wall, a zone, a buffer wall, whereby we're protecting the fort from the water. How long are we going to do this? Is this really sustainable? Yeah, so those are some of the things that we have challenges as a ministry, but I am sure with time this will improve and we will be in a better place. Turkana boy, welcome home is our slogan as a country. Welcome back home. Welcome back home. Karibu Nyumbani is back to where the original, the oldest fossil, human fossil, was found in Turkana.
The cradle of man.
Yes, the cradle. Cradle, we really don't want to use that because it's already been taken by the South Africans. Okay. So what we're trying to do is come up with home of human origins, home of human origins. So this fossil was found in the year 1984. By then it was 1.6 million years old then. So you can imagine how old it is now. We have that stored in our museum in a vault, and it is protected. And every other country, every researcher in museums, they pay for casts to be made, like samples out of the original, because the original cannot live. Yes. So they have this in different museums, and what they showcase are casts, and they make so much money out of it, understanding? So that's why
it's not the real thing.
It is not, but still, this thing is, we have written our own story. We write our own story as Kenya. This is the Turkana boy. Kenya is the home of human origins, and we sell this to other countries. You understand? So if you go to museums in America, in the UK, they have the Turkana boy, but a cast. The original is in Kenya, so we should shout about it from the rooftops that Kenya is actually the home of human origins.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're coming up with a mega state-of-the-art museum in Turkana, where there's also a science park. Well, of course, it's a serious state-of-the-art museum, and it's still in the works. We are, of course, in partnership right now with the defense. There's a presidential task force out. We have researchers on board. We have the Turkana, the TBI, the Turkana Basin Institute, that is also involved, where we're trying to come up with the story being told from Turkana, not Nairobi, from Turkana,
okay,
where tourists can actually land there. There's roads, there's water, there's restaurants, there's picnic sites, and you mingle with the indigenous communities, because we don't want to kill that story of our origin, whereby the Turkana, the people are there, the women are there, their songs, their dances, their cuisines. We don't want to mess that. So we want to appreciate that. So when a tourist comes from America and they have the 7-star hotels, they've seen the white sandy beaches, they don't want that. They've been there. If they want that, they go to Dubai. If they want to do shopping, they go to Qatar or Dubai or wherever. But when you come to Kenya and you go to Turkana, you're not looking for white sandy beaches. You're looking for Lake Turkana. Okay. The story of Lake Turkana. Why isn't it getting smaller? What is the story about it? Why is it a UNESCO World Heritage Site? And so forth. So the stories are endless. And probably another last thing that I would like to mention is the KECOBO, the Kenya Copyright Board, that is under the State Department of Culture, Arts and Heritage. This is where our artists are supposed to get money from. They're supposed to make money. If you play a song on Skizatune, if you play my song on YouTube, if you play my song in a bar, in a salon, in a matatu, I'm supposed to get money out of it, and not small money. I'm supposed to get money that I deserve. Now, what we have done so far as an achievement in the State Department is we have increased that number thanks to the blank tape levy, where that was never there before, but now we've activated that from last year, September, up to now. We've gotten almost 75 million Kenya shillings from that alone. So the blank tape levy is basically funds, money that we get from getting through the port, like levies for the TVs, the CDs, phones, laptops, and so forth. So, and as an artist who, like Anguka now the other day, was a hit, how is that artist not making millions out of this? These are some of the questions, because this money is supposed to go to the artist's pockets, not middlemen, not brokers, not organizations. It's supposed to go directly to. So that's what we're trying to do as government, and also the numbers increased, and we've collected so much since we started taking action.
So the collection of royalties is actually under the State Department of Culture and National Heritage?
It's not that. We have 3 CMOs. Our work is to regulate. The Copyright Board's work is to regulate and have transparent and accountable systems in place, so that the monies of the artists are not stolen. So there are CMOs that are in place that their work is to collect for producers, for musicians, the different CMOs. Currently have some issues in court. That is a story for another day.
Yes.
But we're in court because we're fighting for the right of the artist. And when we ask questions, a lot of people are not comfortable with questions, and we will keep asking those questions, because how is it that an artist of a certain status is earning 15 shillings a whole year, while you are earning millions as the head of a collective management organization? That's one of the CMOs. So these are questions we're asking, and a lot of people are not comfortable, but we're okay with that. We like ruffling feathers, and we'll continue with that, as long as the money goes to the pockets of the artists.
Okay. On the issue of cultural diplomacy, and you talked about the Kenya House, but even locally within the continent, there's been the issue about language and ensuring that Kiswahili becomes lingua franca in Kenya. It is not just Kiswahili in Kenya. Kiswahili is a shared language among so many countries. How far are we with that, and is it something that will directly benefit Kenya, with the knowledge that Kiswahili is not just ours alone?
Yes. Kiswahili is a language that we should be proud of, and of course Tanzanians also have it, and other countries in East Africa. We recently hosted the Kiswahili Day in Kenya. It is the 3rd Kiswahili Day, and the fact that it is now a UN recognized day is a plus for us, and the fact that we're number 3 to host it as Kenya is a big deal. Kiswahili is fading, so to speak, especially in schools and especially in the younger generation. My kids at home, I talk to them in Kiswahili, they don't understand, and it hurts me, because how is it that you don't understand Kiswahili? Aren't you taught in school? Don't your friends speak Kiswahili? And we have books, we have set books. When I was in school, we had set books in Kiswahili. You read the set book, but just to pass exams, but not really to understand what Siku Njema was about. We have brilliant authors, Ken Walibora, the late, and Mazrui, Ali Mazrui, and the like. But when you go to a KNLS, you will find there's a section for Kiswahili authors and Kiswahili books. Now, we have Kiswahili language in the schools. We tend to not be very active when it comes to plays and performing arts that are in Kiswahili language or even our mother tongue. And this is something we're trying to change. We're coming up with a Kiswahili Council that is specifically on Matters Kiswahili, deals with Matters Kiswahili, so that we are now a fully fledged economic sector in terms of language, in terms of culture, in terms of heritage. And the Kiswahili Council is a council that now will catapult us into that rank of appreciating Kiswahili as a world language, and the fact that we only celebrate a day should not be enough, because Kiswahili is what we speak. When you go to Tanzania, they speak fluent Kiswahili in Bunge, and when some leaders here try to speak, even myself, when I try to speak Kiswahili, people laugh at me. But it's fine, if you can laugh and I can make it better, then that's cool. So I think another thing is the MOUs, cultural diplomacy. We've signed many MOUs with different countries in Africa and in Europe. And why are we signing MOUs with these countries? It's basically to deepen our cultural cooperation. And we signed with countries like Ethiopia. We've signed with the French, with the Greek, and we need to exchange our cultural assets that we have. There are museums and there are countries in this world where you go to, and there's literally no culture. The culture that we have and the culture we have there's immense difference. So what we're trying to do is take Kenya to the world. If you have a beautiful thing, share it with the world. And that was the point of the Kenya House in Paris, where we showcased our different cultures, our different cuisines, and tourists. Actually, it was not only the French. People came from all over the world to watch the Olympics. So they would come to Kenya House, and we're not the only ones with a Kenya House.
And that reminds me that
we're not the only ones with a house. The Americans had their own house, and I think we were only two African countries that had a house.
Okay.
And the exhibition is basically to showcase your assets.
Okay. When the president was in the US earlier this year, and there's a clear push for Hollywood to come and tap into the Kenyan film industry. You've talked about festivals, and you'll tell us more about the upcoming festivals. There's the Kenya film industry, there's a theatre arts, you mentioned something about music, and one wonders, how is the State Department of Culture and National Heritage tapping into those, including content creation that the president is very keen on? Are we really trying to make Kenyan content creators, film producers, musicians, and other artists part of this discussion?
Definitely, yeah. Because when His Excellency the President was in Hollywood this year, and the conversation was around film, the conversation was around creative arts and theatre. We have so much content in Kenya. We have different artists who have written amazing scripts. So what we're trying to do is to partner, to bring a Hollywood to Kenya. You see the way there's Nollywood, but at a certain level of interaction between ourselves and the amount, you see that there's so much content when it comes to Americans in terms of acting, and they get so much money from acting, performing arts, and the actors make so much money. So we're trying to borrow a leaf and to see how we can bring that to our country and help our artists grow and help our artists. Like we have Lupita Nyong'o and the like. It's a Kenyan name, yes, but we want more of that. We want to home grow our own artists and use the systems, we use the resources, we use the aid, we use the creativity that is there. We merge it with what we have back at home. Now infuse that with our cultures, our different history and stories that we have as a country. And boom, we'd have the best Kenyan Hollywood here at home. So we've activated that, and they have the Oscars and the Grammys, and when it comes to music and acting, how do we encourage our artists to bring more to the table in terms of production? How do we do that? We have the creatives. The creative sector, we just look at them through TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, but are these artists really making money with, most of them, some of them are saying, some of them are really gone into depressions and have serious mental breakdowns because they do so much to be creative, to bring their products out to the world, to the country, but is it being appreciated? We're trying to change that narrative where you as an artist, you as a songwriter, you as a producer can benefit, you can reap what you have brought to us. And that is why the conversation around Hollywood, around the Oscars, around the Grammys was activated by His Excellency the President.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically that is it. So the State Department has festivals that we partner with the county governments. We have the Ma, we have the Turkana, Tobonglore, and Tobonglore is in Turkana. Tobonglore is an infusion of different cultures from across even the borders. We have cultural dancers, cultural groups that come from Uganda, Ethiopia, South Sudan, and we merge this with our Kenyan culture. In Turkana, it is I think it is one of the biggest festivals that we have in the country. We're proud of it because what is showcased there is the way of livelihood of these different communities, and you get to appreciate it. And I wish other parts of this country could borrow a leaf from that side of the Ma and the Turkana, where even Northeastern could come together and have their own Somali cultural festival. We could go to like we have the Uraget from Tharakanithi. But at the end of the day, we need a merger on where I don't have to necessarily go to Turkana. I don't have to necessarily go to Narok to experience this. Bring that to us at a central place in Nairobi, and that is what we're trying to work on. So December this year, we're going to have a merger of our cultural dances, our music, where we will showcase different communities in Nairobi. And this is a win for us because we don't want to leave anyone behind when it comes to
It'll be a national cultural festival?
Yes,
okay.
In December, probably the 3rd. We're trying to get the dates right. And what happens is we usually have it, but it's at a smaller scale where we go around the counties. It rotates. Like last year, we were in Kitui. The year before, we were in Makueni. And this year, we'll be in Taita Taveta. But once we launch and open it officially, we would like to have it in a central place, probably Nairobi, Bomas of Kenya, where we will now call Kenyans for free. Come and visit and experience your culture. Bring your children. Let them milk a cow. Let them drink mursik. Let them eat ugali and see the experience of not eating a pizza vis-a-vis eating ugali.
Interesting. Is it the same as what we have in schools, the National Schools and Colleges Drama Festival, the Kenya Music Festival as well?
Yeah, it's a good question. So they used to be together. They were merged initially. So in the late 1980s, around 89, 90, His Excellency the President then, Moi, divided the two, the music festivals, which are for schools, which is now under education, and then ours, which is culture and music festival, which is now held annually. So both are held annually. It was too bulky. There's so much content and so much going on. So that's why we divided that into two as government. So it's worked perfectly for us. So culture music is under us, and we support this as a State Department. Okay.
All right. There's something about the culture bill where even the Swahili language is going to come into. And one wonders, okay, what do we need a bill for culture when it comes to policy making? What is the place of policy in as far as handling issues, culture, and national heritage? And where are we on that?
Okay. So as a country, we've never had a bill, a culture bill specifically. And it's fascinating how we made it through all these years saying that there's a state.
It's part of our life, and one wonders, do we really need the legislation?
We do. We do, because then you will have a seat at the table. You will have public participation on what should be removed, what should be added into the legislation. You know, when you have a legislation, is the only time you can have a policy. So when you have a policy in place, when you have an act, a culture act in place, then you can comfortably say that the law does not say A, B, C, D. The law says A, C, E, F, what do you call it? The law says A, B, C, D and does not say E, F, G, H. So without a legislation, it's not possible to oppose something which is not anchored on law. You see, from an act is where you get subsidiary legislations, from an act is where you get policies, from an act is where you get regulations, and this is how you implement that act. So for us, right now we have the culture bill, which is in Bunge, and I think now it's at the AGs because of the recent change in the AG. It's taken slow pace, but I'm sure in the next couple of weeks it would have moved to the second reading and the third reading. So for us, it is a win as a State Department. The fact that we have never had a culture bill.
And what are some of these things that are contained in the culture bill? Many Kenyans may wonder, okay, what exactly are you looking to build a framework around? What are some of the provisions or the proposals in the bill?
Yeah, so we have the likes of the miti shambas, the likes of the, what do you call it, the miti shambas, where you take the mwarubaini, for instance, and how do I use the mwarubaini tree to make medical herbs and medicinal herbs for myself? Is it legal for me to go and pluck mwarubaini from the coast and use it in my chemist back at home? So we're trying to legalize that. The fact that we have a content in terms of herbs that you can use and you can use to heal people, because it has been happening before, so it is one of our cultural practices. Another thing is the cultural dress. We're trying to put it in that legislation because we have a sense of identity as a country once it is in an act and it's anchored in law. We have the indigenous cultures, and we have, what do you call it, the practices that different communities have in the country. So the legislation inculcates and puts together all, merging all these cultures into a certain legislation, whereby you can come and make amendments in the future. You can come and you know, have a conversation with even the youth. And then we've also put in place the digital part of the culture, whereby we're moving from reading how to put mwarubaini together or how to put beadwork together, and we're going to a situation whereby we can digitize and document it. So we're working towards that in the legislation. So this, once it's anchored in a law, it is for us to confidently say that, listen, this is already an act. Okay. So we come up with regulations to implement this at the county levels and also in the different parts of the country.
And that's interesting because there's been this conversation about regulating even traditional brews, and I don't know if that falls under your purview, because the brews that are used culturally in cultural ceremonies, the moratina, busa, and such like, and they are not regulated, and in fact they are considered illicit. And one wonders, is there a push through the State Department of Culture and National Heritage to try and ring-fence some of this under some legal framework, probably? Yeah,
so the negative cultures, there's some negative cultures, so to speak, and we encourage some of those cultures that are there, but there's some that are outdated and we need to do away with. There's some that are going to the extreme. If you take Moguka conversation, for instance, or you take the brews that are there in the coastal part, the Griamas, I can't remember the name, but there's Mnazi. The Mnazi, for instance, it's a socializing time for wazees and men, and the women go and do other things, sing or braid hair, or, you know, so it's a time for boys. So it's an enjoyment time. So such things are not really negative cultures. They're cultures which we encourage, as long as they're moderated. You cannot be crazy drunk and you insist that it's your culture. FGM is also another thing, one of the negative cultures we're trying to eradicate, because it has no value. And the raids, you go and raid, you're a man now, you go and raid another village and you're now a Simba. Those are negative cultures which need to stop. But then the positive things like you know, coming of men together to make a decision for the community, make a decision for the family by taking Mnazi, that is an okay thing. So the bill now has now put that in place, whereby we really hope it will be passed very soon, because then we can confidently say that, listen, there's a legislation here that says A, B, C, D, and you cannot be able to do 1, 2, 3. So for us, we really hope that the bill moves. And probably another thing I'd like to talk about is catapulting culture into a fully fledged economic sector. we seem to be focusing so much on the infrastructural part of our country, and we seem to forget about our patriotic part as a country, the identity of the people as Kenya. And patriotism seems to be dwindling, and it seems to be very weak for us.
Why is that, for example? Is it something just uniquely Kenyan because other people are very patriotic?
Exactly.
Is it a uniquely Kenyan thing?
I think it's a culture of nonchalance, of not caring, because if you respect the Constitution, if you, when you see the national flag, the flag being brought down, you should stand at attention and wait, right? 6 p.m. flags are brought down, wait. But you see people walking, especially the youth. Is it that they don't understand? They have not been sensitized? There are schools that don't actually sing the national anthem. We used to sing the loyalty pledge. I mean, we used to sing the loyalty and you feel it. But right now it's like, it's not important.
Yes.
So I think there's a gap there where we are trying to work with the Ministry of Education to inculcate this in our children, be it plays, be it acts of patriotism, play the Mau Mau videos, play the plays themselves in front of the children for them to appreciate why should I be patriotic? Why should I be proud to be a Kenyan? You know, for us, we are moved. If we had these old songs of, you know, Mimi Kenya Daima and such things, we are moved. But for the younger generation, it's like it's not important. I'd rather listen to Jay-Z and Beyonce. That's cool than listening to these old songs. So we need to do a lot when it comes to inculcating patriotism in our children. And you know, our youth, I think, are wired differently, because when you wreck an institution, when you write things on Twitter, it makes us really look awkward to other countries, because other countries will not dare do that. And it's not about being pushed as youth and you're not supposed to speak. You have every right to speak up, but it should be objective in such a way that you protect your country, you protect your pride as a country. If people are wearing our Ushanga bracelets across the globe, they'll start now asking questions, okay, if themselves, they don't love their country, why should we love Kenya? So I think it's a conversation we need to have with the Gen Zs, with Gen Alpha, with the social media influencers, because I think sometimes to get to this generation is through putting this in the social media part, Twitter, TikTok. TikTok, for instance, is a place for dancing, and you know, if it were me, I would have banned it. It's just that I can't, but because you find...
You don't like dancing?
You see, you cannot have an 8-year-old on TikTok. You cannot have a 10-year-old on Snapchat. What are you snapping, you know? So I think there should be some sort of regulations for that. And then we should encourage our cultural dances, our cultural folk tales, our poetries on TikTok. Actually block out everything else and let it be more cultural and more patriotic for you to understand.
Local content.
Yeah, local content, exactly. And then people don't even, our generation right now, the younger generation, don't understand what the colors of a child, any Gen Z, and ask them, I don't know why I keep calling them Gen Z, probably Gen Alpha and the younger generation. Ask them, what does the black stand for? What does the green stand for? What does the red stand for? Oh, well, it's just colors, you know. I just like red because it's Valentine's red, that kind of thing. But in real sense, do you understand what's the story of the flag? Where did the stanzas, the Kiswahili, the anthem, our anthem in Kiswahili, where did it come from? Who wrote it? You know, such things. Who wrote it? Who are the authors? Was it, which county did that man come from? You know, so these are some of the things probably we need.
Interesting, and we could go on and on about culture, national heritage. It's one of those very interesting discussions. But Madam Pierce, we've come to the end of this interview, but what would you want to leave Kenyans with in as far as culture and national heritage is concerned?
I want Kenyans to help me make culture cool again. Culture is cool. Culture is fantastic. Culture is not boring. And I want you to come to the National Museums of Kenya, to Bomas of Kenya, to the National Theatre, and experience our vast content, our impeccable art that we have as a country. Let's make culture cool again. All right.
Thank you so much. Let's make culture cool again. Thank you so much, Principal Secretary for Culture, the Arts and Heritage, Umi Bashir. As we continue taking a look at the scorecard of President William Ruto 2 years into his administration in as far as culture, the arts and heritage is concerned, it is a conversation that will definitely continue. Thank you so much for your time at TV47. And we will looking forward to hosting you more and even attending the National Festival later.